What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you yet another installment of our Dynasty Decision series we do over here at the Fantasy Stock Exchange YouTube channel. So yeah, you guys love the series, as always. We're going to keep bringing it to you. Corey, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. If you guys want to be featured at an upcoming episode, you guys know the drill. Join the Discord, totally free to do so. Follow us on Twitter, totally free to do so. You can DM us your team, your questions, your trade questions, your who should I draft in my rookie draft questions. This guy offered me a deal. Whatever your question is relating to Dynasty Fantasy Football, you can ask us directly on DMs on Twitter or DM on Discord if you do one of those two things that we just said. But yeah, we're going to get into this. We got a lot of questions here, a lot of variety this time too, and a lot of trades. So keep them coming. We'll do these, like we said. As long as you guys want to do these, we'll keep doing them.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get into the first team, though, gonna hit the intro. Okay, so let's start off with the first team, and it's actually going to be a trade proposal from a guy in my personal home league. That's going to be Mosh. So he basically asked that in a tight end premium league, he would be getting Devonta Smith and Mike Williams in exchange for Mark Andrews. And for context on the scoring settings, so you guys can see the team on the screen. For the scoring settings, it is a super flex half PPR league with a 2x tight end premium. If you guys aren't familiar with the tight end premium, in this format, because it's half PPR, tight ends would receive a full PPR, so 2 times the amount of other positions. So I want to get your thoughts on it. You guys can see it on the screen, but he does have Andrews and Hawkinson. But for me personally, I would need a bit more to give up Andrews in this type of format.
Yeah, to me, I would move Hawkinson. I believe more in Andrews than I do in Hawkinson, and especially given the fact that we know that TJ Hawkinson is in a situation that is going to be very ripe for targets, and this is a tight end premium league where you get full PPR per reception. I think Hawkinson could probably fetch you more than Andrews could also.
Yeah, for sure. And what are your thoughts on the package here, Smith and Williams?
It's not enough for me. Like I love Devonta Smith, and I think Mike Williams is a decent sleeper. But if I'm going to be trading a top 4 tight end, especially in a tight end premium, I'm going to need a significantly better receiver than that, and potentially even like a running back I would prefer, because, I mean, we all know receivers are few and far between. If somebody's giving me a receiver for Mark Andrews in a tight end premium, I need, a difference maker at the receiver position. I need a T. Higgins. I need a Brandon Ayuk or something like that.
In addition to Devonta, or?
Yeah, in addition to like Devonta Smith or like another piece. Like I would need some real difference maker, because as much as I love Devonta Smith, he's not a difference maker yet. And Mark Andrews to me is a difference maker at the tight end position in a premium format.
For sure. So overall, I would hold off on this move. But again, if you're still shopping the tight end position, you're going to have to do it, because I got 2 ballers as well with Kittle and Waller. But anyways, had to make that little joke. We'll go into the next deal, and that's going to be Lumber's trade. So you guys can see it on the screen right now, but he made a huge type of move. We're talking about premium assets, specifically at the wide receiver position, and you can see the couple running backs on the screen as well. But basically here you see a AJ Brown and Javonte Williams swap in exchange for Miles Sanders and Justin Jefferson. And me and Corey kind of agree. We love this move for you. You can break it down first, and then I can kind of add on to that.
Right. And I have AJ Brown straight up ranked higher than Justin Jefferson. I'm sure there's people out there that have Justin Jefferson ranked higher, and that's fine. They're both in the same kind of tier of player. They're both super young. They're both super talented. Justin Jefferson maybe has a bit higher of a ceiling just because of the unknown factor with him, and the fact that AJ Brown now has Julio Jones in his offense. But I think when you're looking at those two guys, to me, it's pretty much a wash. And then it comes down to the running backs, right? And I don't think it's all that close between Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, who I would rather have for Dynasty. I know Miles Sanders is probably going to be better this year, I would say. He's definitely going to be better to start the year, but it wouldn't shock me if by the end of this season alone, we're already touting Javonte Williams as a significantly better running back asset than Miles Sanders. And I think if nothing else, I talked about this with Javonte Williams before, the fact that Melvin Gordon is only on what is a 1-year contract, if nothing else, even if he underperforms a little bit, his value is going to stay very high. Whereas if Miles Sanders has a down year this year, his value could really, really tank, because then he'll be going into his contract year on a team that is going to be rebuilding completely. And Javonte Williams, we could be looking at a guy whose ceiling next year is next year's like Cam Akers, the guy that is a borderline first-round pick.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I mean, we're talking about a team that invested that high second round capital into Javonte Williams this year, traded up in front of the Dolphins in order to do so. And right after the pick, we're literally touting how they got their next Nick Chubb, how they got their next Ezekiel Elliott. And for record, I mean, we've talked about Javonte Williams a bunch of times, but his ceiling, as you mentioned, is legitimately top 5 to 10, in my opinion, if he does get that workload role or workhorse type of role. So overall, I agree. And again, the fourth rounders means nothing. Basically speaking, you're going to get 10 picks before an undrafted free agent pool is how I look at it at best case scenario. So overall, I think you made out in spades here because of the discrepancy between us for Javonte and Miles Sanders.
Right. And especially if you're in any kind of rebuilding situation too, this is Javonte Williams is like the number one person I would say to go out and acquire if you're rebuilding, because he's going to have a down season probably relative to some of the other running backs that I have ranked around him. I would say he's going to have a down season because, like I said, with Cam Akers, he's probably looking at a situation where he doesn't get a full-time workload until about week 10, week 11, week 12, like Cam Akers did. And I think Javonte Williams is a more talented prospect than Cam Akers. I had a higher grade on Williams than I did on Akers. So, and I think the offense also, we haven't even talked about the fact that offense could add a superstar level quarterback either before the season or after this season. If Drew Lock is a complete train wreck, they could go out and acquire Deshaun Watson or an Aaron Rodgers, and that'll even greater elevate Javonte Williams' value. And if you choose to sell him or if you want to just hold on to him at that point.
Yep, I fully agree. So with that being said, we can go on to the next team, and that's going to be Dirtbag Obito's team. Very, very unique name. I rate it. And the two things that he has here is that he's contending team. What should he do next? And he wants us to give our overall thoughts on the trades he's made to this point. And talking about his team, Corey, you can take it away here.
Yeah, he's got a pretty solid team as far as depth is concerned. I would say his quarterbacks are a little weak. He's got Cousins, Tua, Jameis, Big Ben, and Taysom Hill. Running backs, just absolutely absurd. Antonio Gibson, Cam Akers, Alvin Kamara, J.K. Dobbins, Chris Carson, Raheem Mostert, Chase Edmonds. He legitimately has like 7 or 8 startable running backs on any given dynasty roster. I would say Chase Edmonds is his RB like 7. He'd probably be the RB 3 or 4 for most other teams in any other dynasty league. And then wide receiver wise, he's got some great options. MT, Julio, Tyler Lockett, T. Higgins, Jarvis Landry, and some other guys. Tight ends, Noah Fant is starter, and he's got some intriguing young pieces. The only thing is that he doesn't really have any draft picks. I'm assuming he traded all of them away to acquire the running backs that he has on this team. But as you can see on the screen right now, he made a couple trades to get this team that he currently has. And the trade that he made first was a little ill-advised, in my opinion, but he made up for it later using one of the pieces in this trade. And he traded away Tom Brady and Austin Eckler for Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Mixon, and T. Higgins. Now, Joe Mixon and Ben Roethlisberger would not be guys I would advocate to go out and trade for right now. But
T. Higgins?
No, Joe Mixon and Ben Roethlisberger.
Oh, Joe Mixon. Okay. I thought you said
those
T.
two
Higgins.
guys I wouldn't be trading for because
agreed.
I'm sure there's going to be some people touting Ben Roethlisberger as a fine buy low if you need a rental quarterback. He's done. He's cooked. I don't want anything to do with him. I think you're going to pay more than he's worth. And the only reason I would go out and acquire him is if I had a quarterback injury and I just absolutely needed somebody to fill my quarterback slot, because I think he's going to be a guy that you're disappointed with more often than not. But after that trade, even though I think he lost that trade, he traded Joe Mixon straight up for J.K. Dobbins. And if you basically just sub Joe Mixon out of that trade and sub in J.K. Dobbins, you could break down that trade looking at J.K. Dobbins versus Austin Eckler, in my opinion, is very close. I would consider it a wash. Maybe you think Austin Eckler is a bit better of an asset, but I think it's very close. And then you're looking at Ben Roethlisberger and T. Higgins for Tom Brady, which I would take the Roethlisberger and T. Higgins side of that deal.
I'd take Higgins over him straight up.
Yeah, I would take Higgins over Brady straight up. So yeah, Higgins to me is clearly the best asset in that. If you wash out the running backs, he's clearly the best asset remaining. So between those two trades, I think you definitely made your team better because J.K. Dobbins is a guy that I'm going to be higher on than consensus. I've already kind of admitted that. And I think what you did with packaging or with getting rid of him for Joe Mixon is exactly the type of trade I would make as well with a guy like Joe Mixon, who I think his shelf life is dwindling as often the case with running backs in the NFL. Yeah,
I mean, you echoed everything that I thought about this deal. If you look at it as an overall swap, he basically turned Brady and Eckler into Roethlisberger, Higgins, and Dobbins. So I like that, and I do think you made your team better with that. And he also mentioned that he acquired LaMichael Pirine for 2024. I don't give a crap about that 2024 fourth. As little of an asset as Pirine is, like, let's be honest, what's the likelihood of you even hitting with that pick? And who knows, maybe Pirine can carve out a role this year. Like, for a fourth, I'm willing to take a gamble.
If you got a super buy low candidate like P. Ryan, who you believed in coming out of college or whatever, take your shot. 2024 fourth isn't going to make the slightest of a dent in your roster. So yeah, go if you got guys like that are low end guys that you just want on your team because Dynasty's supposed to be fun and you believed in the guy coming out of school, just go acquire him. It's 2024 fourth is nothing. Yeah, so I definitely like all those moves that you made. When you combine the first two trades, you have clearly, in my opinion, the best running back core in your league. I don't even need to see your other teams. He says contending team. What should he do next? What I would do next is try and upgrade at quarterback because you have Kirk Cousins, you have Tua Tagovailoa, you have Jameis Winston / Taysom Hill, so the Saints quarterbacks. I think you have like two very shaky options with Kirk Cousins, his future situation, and the Saints situation. And even Tua is not really the most stable option either. So what I would be looking to do is either go out and acquire a middle tier quarterback using Kirk Cousins and one of your running backs on your bench, like Chris Carson, like Raheem Mostert, or like Chase Edmonds. See if you can go, Kirk Cousins and Chris Carson and go out and acquire a Ryan Tannehill, Russell Wilson potentially.
Joe Burrow potentially, yeah. And if you wanted to get, a little bit better of a quarterback, you could try and package Kirk Cousins and J.K. Dobbins or Cam Akers or Antonio Gibson and go out and get a stud. Go out and get a Kyler Murray, a Dak Prescott, a Justin Herbert, or someone like whoever you think is worth that kind of pick, a Lamar Jackson. I think you could potentially go a Kirk Cousins and a J.K. Dobbins and go out and acquire Dak Prescott or Lamar Jackson with that value. Yeah, I was about to say I wouldn't give up Gibson or Akers in that exchange, but if you can do it with Dobbins and Cousins, I would do that for, again, one of those elite of the elite type of quarterbacks. You're not going to get Mahomes for it, let's be honest here. Probably not going to get Josh Allen because of the way consensus in the industry views him. But we both have Lamar and Dak right on that.
And then Kyler also right on that border too.
So, if you can make a move like that, you strengthen up your team. You clearly have a complete win now type of team. I mean, your team is absolutely loaded.
That's all I would do, though. I would only try and upgrade your quarterback situation. I wouldn't get cute and start trading receivers away or anything like that. I would use one of those elite, like you have 4 elite running backs, in my opinion. I would use one of those elite running backs to upgrade your quarterback situation. And if you don't want to upgrade it that much, then you could just use one of your other running backs. Like Chris Carson is a fine running back asset. If you approach a win now team who has maybe a young QB, you could even potentially make this deal Kirk Cousins and Chris Carson for maybe even a Trevor Lawrence or a Trey Lance too, if you wanted to acquire a young quarterback.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. So we can shake off to the next team, and that's going to be StoneyTavern's team. And you can take it away with this one because the way he outlined this team, if y'all can all do this, it'd be greatly appreciated because it makes our lives easier, but you can take it away.
Yeah, so Nick is his name, StoneyTavern. He set up his team in a way that makes it very easy for us to just put it in the show doc and get it going. But you can see it on the screen there. He has his team. All the bolded players are guys that would be starting for his team, and then anybody in italics would be on his bench. And his questions are, who should he target in his draft, right? He has the 105, the 302, and the 402. He's currently right now caught between Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, and Justin Fields with that 105 pick. And then he also wants just some quick roster analysis and next steps to go forward. So to me, there's an obvious pick that you have with that 105. And to me, it's Kyle Pitts, and it's not close because when you look at your team, right, it's a 2 quarterback league. So you do need to start 2 quarterbacks every single week, but you have 2 of the top 5 dynasty quarterbacks that there is. And Jared Goff is a fine starting quarterback as well. So as much as Justin Fields would help your team, the fact that
you need Pitts.
Starting tight end is Dan Arnold. And he also has Disley and Bold. So I don't know if that means he's a starter, if it's a 2 tight end league or something like that, but you need Kyle Pitts. The point is you need Kyle Pitts for your team. He's a stud at the position. It's not a tier break. They're all in the same kind of tier for me and for you. Yeah. Jamar Chase also would help your team, but the difference between Cortland Sutton and Jamar Chase is a lot smaller than the difference between Dan Arnold and Kyle Pitts.
Heck, and he has Marquise Brown in that starting lineup when he's got Pittman on the bench here too. So you got fine receiver depth. But yeah, your tight ends, you need that stud. And Kyle Pitts, he's currently my tight end 4 in Dynasty, but I've seen, in terms of his value, in terms of appreciating asset, he may be the best overall tight end in terms of value right now. Like, I think you can go out in general. If you were to pull Dynasty Twitter, if you're to pull a lot of people in Dynasty easily, because you think about it, if you ask the majority of people that maybe weren't like true contenders, who would you rather have? Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, or Kyle Pitts? There'd be a good chunk of them that would say Kyle Pitts simply due to the age. So overall, if you're talking about appreciating asset, you're talking about a guy that if he has 800, 900 yards, 8 to 10 touchdowns this year, and he's playing
the tight end one, it's not close.
It's not close.
He has that.
So overall, if you're able to get that to 105, I mean, talk about appreciating asset. You could be able to get 3+ first for him as soon as next year if you're to actually look at Kyle Pitts. So I do agree there. You go Kyle Pitts at the 105. 302, the guy I'm really looking at, and I'm sure you're the same. If Kellen Mond makes it to your 302, I think that would be a smash pick because you currently got a steady 1 to 2 year option with Goff. Getting a Mond who has the potential to develop into a good starting quarterback in the future, especially with the current situation of Kirk Cousins on the Vikings. That is a good developmental quarterback for to have on your team, considering you don't need a pressing quarterback right now, given those top 2 guys you have and Goff, who could be a decent QB3, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and that might be a hard, acquisition to make because it is a 2 quarterback league. I would imagine Mond probably goes somewhere in the late second round. But if he is there at the 302, yeah, it's a smash pick. And I think he's not there. That's when you address your receivers. And you should be able to acquire a decent receiver at 302. You might be able to get a De'Ami Brown, a Nico Collins, an Amari Rogers, whoever you believe in that kind of range. I think you should be able to add to your roster. To me, I would look for someone like De'Ami Brown if he's there, but if he's not there, Nico Collins is the guy that I would be honing in on just because you do have a lot of, stable starting caliber guys. You could use some true upside guys. And I think Collins fits that description, especially once we get some clarity on the Deshaun Watson situation and how the Texans are going to handle their thing going forward. I think Collins at the bare minimum has a chance to step in right away and be effective. And with that 402, again, I would probably just go best player available. You might be able to acquire a late round, quarterback tight end option. I think tight end might actually be the option that I would go with at that 402. If you can get a Hunter Long there as your second tight end behind Kyle Pitts, I think that'd be a phenomenal pick as well. And you might even, if you wanted to go a little bit deeper and take a later round tight end after Hunter Long, I wouldn't hate that either.
Yeah, we're not even recognize the fact that it is also an IDP league. Again, we're not going to make strict IDP advice on it because we're not good enough to be able to do that because we don't play IDP. But 302, if we're talking about a couple defensive players mixed in on that ADP in those top 24 picks, I mean, you could see some falling values overall. So again, 105 has to be Pitts in our opinion, given the state of your team, given the fact that he's in that tier 1. And at the 302, 402, looking at the Mon, looking at the Hunter Long, but always keeping an eye out on overall value if anything.
Right. And if, like you said, if a Parsons or something or whoever else is IDP, I don't even know who IDP startup values are, but if we get 3 or 4 defensive players in there, you might even get a steal at 302. You might get a Mond, you might get a Rondell Moore, or something slides to you that you didn't expect. So yeah, that's the direction I would probably go with it. We could probably move on to the next, not a team, but Matt 45. He has a great question here. I think this is a good concept to talk about in general, but we always talk about this. Well, Danny specifically always talks about this, but trading down to acquire value in a startup draft is something that you can really take advantage of, especially if the players that you're playing with maybe don't understand Dynasty as well as you. I'm assuming you understand Dynasty well because you're listening to us, but he traded down using the 102. So I'd imagine that's Josh Allen in most cases, and the 211. So those are the 2 premium picks that he gave up, but he got a boatload of picks in return. And the 303, 410, 503, 610, and 810, those are good. Those are good picks. I know you don't want to give up Josh Allen, right? You don't want to give up Josh Allen. And let's say the 211 is, who's the 211 in this case? Calvin Ridley?
If it's a super flex, probably looking at Ezekiel Elliott, Austin Eckler, maybe a quarterback, if a Burrow falls.
J.K. Dobbins, maybe.
J.K. Dobbins, somebody in
so
that
again, that's a great player, but those later round picks that you gave up, I'm not even concerned. 21, 17, 19th round, those are the best player you're getting in that range is
Gerald Everett
and stuff. I don't really care about those picks. Even in the 17th round, you're not getting that great of players. You're probably getting Brandon Cooks maximum. That's the best case scenario.
You got to wish you're getting Brandon Cooks. Cooks
you're not getting anything in that 17th round. But with that 3rd round pick, like we said, those same guys, J.K. Dobbins, maybe a Calvin Ridley slides there. That 410 is probably another solid asset as well. You might be able to get Amari Cooper or something like that at 410. And then 503, again, you're probably looking at a Mike Evans, Amari Cooper. Quarterback wise, you're probably looking at a Ryan Tannehill, someone in that neighborhood. You're getting really solid options all around for one elite guy, essentially 2 elite guys.
And I'll tell you, the way I kind of view this trade is 303 and 810 for the 211. I prefer the 303 side pretty significantly because you're still getting the same tier and you're getting a top 8 round pick. And then the 102 versus a 4, 5, and a 6. 1 and 2 102 and fodder for a 4, 5, and 6. I would still take the 4, 5, and 6. The way I look at it, you're talking about a Tannehill, a Javonte Williams, and a Brandon Ayuk or Josh Allen.
Yeah, I would take the package side. Right? I believe in all those players, and I think Josh Allen, while he's a great asset, is not going to move the needle enough for me to move off of that grade of options. And again, I'm more so in the camp of I like taking elite players, but when you get an offer like this, where you're getting because he also is going to have his own 3rd round pick, right? Because he didn't trade his own 3rd round pick. He didn't trade his own 4th round pick. He didn't trade his own 5th round pick. So he's going to have 2 picks in all of those rounds. Yeah. And that's when he can load up on like Terry McLaurin's and, Travis Etienne's and like players like that are going to fill out the foundation of his roster going forward. And he could have even potentially even asked for like a future first or something if he wanted to go in that direction too. So trading down in general in the startup is always a smart idea if you can get appropriate value. And I would say the best way to determine if you're getting appropriate value, go look up some ADP on Google using, DLF or 4for4 or something like that, and attribute names to the picks. Go, okay, who's going at the 303 right now? Oh, it's J.K. Dobbins. Who's going at the 102? That's Josh Allen. Who's going at the 211? That's Ezekiel Elliott. Like, that's what I'm giving up. That's what I'm getting. And that's the easy way to determine if you're getting a good deal or if you're not.
Yeah, and let me touch up upon this real quick as well. I mean, we're looking at the fact that you're going to have, again, 2 picks in every single one of those rounds is just absolutely fantastic. And in general, it gives you so much more flexibility. If you're in those mid rounds and a quarterback run happens and, oh, guess what? I already have 2 picks every round anyways. I can move down. So if you're at that 410 and there's 302, whatever your other 3rd round pick. So 302 and 303, you got a quarterback there, and somebody's dying for a quarterback at one of those 410, 503, or 610 spots. You could realistically move down like 2 rounds and get a future first on top of it, because people are going to panic when they see runs, and that's how you capitalize. So that's why overall, the way I look at it is trade down, get these mid-round picks, because you can take advantage when people start to panic. You want to be the guy that's cool ahead of the time, so that when people start panicking, people start overpaying just to fill out their starting lineup, fill out their quarterback spot, fill out their wide receiver 2, RB2. That's when you can just say, okay, you know what? You want this pick? This is my price. Boom. Make it happen. And not to mention, again, the reason why I always love dealing down, I know I'm getting on a little bit of a tangent right now, but it's all about appreciating assets, as I always say. You can't have an appreciating asset if you're picking them at 102. Like, Josh Allen is never going to be the 101 because Patrick Mahomes exists, unless, God forbid, anything serious were to happen to Patrick Mahomes. There is a 1 pick discrepancy that Josh Allen could ever go up in value. By getting those mid-round picks, like if you hit on this year's DK Metcalf, this year's Justin Jefferson, this year's CeeDee Lamb, that value discrepancy, boom. Right now, it may look on the surface as a fair trade. A year from now, your assets have more of an ability to increase in value. So that's why I always love getting these abundance of picks.
Right. And I'm looking at like our own draft board in our listener league, and the range of picks that you got is also important, right? Because your lowest pick that you got in that trade was an 8th round pick. Here's some of the guys that went in the 8th round of our listener league: Kenny Golladay, Deebo Samuel, Deontay Johnson, Julio Jones, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Noah Fant, Laviska Shenault. Like, these are good pieces for dynasty rosters. And I would also say that when you look at the 9th, 10th, 11th round after that, there's a bit of a drop off too. So I would say like the picks that you got specifically were actually very, very valuable, because when you get into the 9th round, then you start getting into like Jameis Winston, Jared Goff, Michael Pittman, Odell Beckham, Adam Thielen, Michael Gallup. Like, these are okay pieces, but I think it's a drop off from the 8th round guys that I talked about.
Yeah, definitely. So we can move on and transition to the next team. That's going to be Gingerale. So you guys can see the team on the screen, and his 2 questions are potential trades he could make. So the first one would be Zeke in a 2022 first for Akers, and the second one would be Swift in a 2022 first for Akers/Landry. So let's give our overall thoughts. I'm going to read off the team. This is a 1 quarterback league. He's got Josh Allen, Cam Newton, Drew Lock. Running backs: Chubb, Elliott, Dobbins, Swift, Gus Bus, and Pollard. Wide receivers: Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, Deebo Samuel, Devonta Smith, Juju Smith-Schuster, Amari Rogers, Josh Palmer, Russell Gage, and Hamler. And then his tight ends are Irv Smith and Cole Kmet. So what are your thoughts on that first year with Zeke in a 2022 first for Akers? And given the state of his team, I'm assuming that's going to be probably the 111 or 112, because that is a loaded team.
Yeah, see, the hard thing about this deal is if you're in a rebuilding situation, this is a smash, right? Like this is like you do this every day because Zeke is an aging running back and Akers is a 21, 22-year-old running back, and that first is going to be late. But the fact that you have, Josh Allen's in his prime, Nick Chubb's in his prime, J.K. Dobbins going to be entering his prime soon, Stephon Diggs is in his prime. Like, you have a team that's ready to win now. It makes me a little hesitant to give up that 2022 first for Akers because, gun to my head, if you ask me who's going to be better this year for fantasy, I'd probably say Zeke Elliott, but it is very close. So I don't know if it's close enough that I'd be willing to give up another first round pick just to jump from from Elliott to Akers. But I would make the deal if you want to increase the longevity of your team. And I mean, you do have a great young core as well with Dobbins, with Swift, with Debo, with Ridley. Like, I personally would make the move, but I think if you could try and get it maybe a piece back along with Akers, just to see if you can get it a little bit more in your favor, I think I would try and coerce the other owner to do that.
Yeah, and I did mention him. I said this is a fair trade on face value because, again, the way I look at it, you got Akers with 4 years on his rookie contract. You look at Zeke, he could be bought out as soon as 2023, and it's probably likely given the state of the financial situation of the Cowboys and the financial situation of his contract. However, try to ask for a 2022 second back. I know from the surface, okay, maybe it's a fair deal. Maybe I'm getting a little nitpicky, but you never know because you see in the second deal, it was Swift and a 2022 first for Akers and Landry. If you get a 2022 second in exchange for either of them, so if that was Akers in a second or for either side, the Zeke side or the Swift side, I would take the Akers side, and I think you're able to get that type of package because I don't think the majority of casual type players realize Cam Akers' true value being a late first, early second round type of startup pick at this point.
Right. And I think most people, whoever you're trading with, I don't know how good his team is, but I'd imagine his second is closer to your first than he probably assumes initially because your first is going to be late. Maybe he's a middle of the pack or a rebuilding team or something like that, and he has a better second round pick than your second round pick would be, then we're only talking about a 6 or 7 pick difference or something like that. So yeah, I think I would probably go Zeke in a 2022 first for Akers in a third even, but I would just want something a little bit back on top of Akers because I do think you might be losing that deal in the long run just because that first is probably going to equal out like a pretty solid receiver option or something like that. And I do think Zeke and Akers are going to be close, at least for the next 2 years. And with running backs, like I know we like to project 6 years into the future, but you can really only look at a 3 to 4 year window at max with a running back. Even Akers, as young as he is, probably won't be a superstar running back 6 years from now, even though he'll only be like 27, 28. So I would aim for Akers, but I wouldn't force it.
Yeah, agreed. And the second one would be, as I mentioned, Swift in a 22 first for basically the same type of deal, except you'd also be getting Landry. I wouldn't as well. Again, if you could make it Akers in a second, that's something I would consider given the state of your team. But just Landry to me is just redundant considering he would be your wide receiver 7 in this instance. He's probably worth at this point a third round pick, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Landry just seems like
he's a good piece to acquire if you're a contending team, but the problem is he wouldn't even see this the light of day in your starting lineup. So yeah, there's not really any point of having him. I would much rather have the draft capital as well. Swift in the 2022 first for Akers in the 2022 second. Yes, I would do that, but I would not do it for Landry because to me, he's only worth about a third round value. And I think that second rounder is more important, especially when you consider who's starting for your team.
Yeah, agreed. So overall, we do believe if you guys gathered anything from that Zeke and Swift kind of have similar value, and Landry isn't simply enough to make up the difference in addition to Akers to lose that 22 first. So we can move off to the next questions, and that's going to be from JHeit, and he basically asked 2 separate dynasty value, who would you rather have type of deals. So the first one being Cole Kmet versus Irv Smith, the second one being CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase. So let's talk about the first one. These are very similar players. The thing is, though, we've talked about in depth multiple times that tight ends usually break out by the third year. And by math, they're similar age, except Irv is actually going into his third year and has way more opportunity to break out. So I will take Irv Smith in both dynasty and redraft. But again, we're talking like back-to-back in our rankings type of deal here. Although I prefer Irv Smith, I do still think Kmet's a value.
Yeah. I think this was like our tight end 9 and 10 or something in Dynasty. So I like both of these guys. I would prefer Irv Smith, but if you're talking about a value proposition, like if you were to trade for these guys, for example, you're going to be able to get Kmet cheaper than Irv Smith, I would say, because a lot of people, I've seen people rank Irv Smith in like their top 7 or 8. like ahead of like Noah Fant before. So if you can get Irv Smith or Cole Kmet for significantly less than Irv Smith in a trading situation, then I would prefer Kmet in that situation. But at face value, both of them are equal. It's a startup. I'm on the clock. I got to pick one or the other. I will pick Irv Smith over Cole Kmet.
For sure. Let's talk about the second deal. That's going to be CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase long-term. And I'll have a little bit of a Cowboys rant here. Look, I love Jamar Chase. He's the wide receiver one in this class, given the landing spot, given the opportunity, given the volume we should expect. But CeeDee Lamb is coming off one of the better rookie seasons we've seen from a receiver, is a top receiver and what should be a top 5 offense this year that'll throw the ball at a league high clip. We could say at least top 5 league high in terms of volume type of clip. And he already has his season 1 under wrap. So overall, again, these guys are very similar in my rankings and in the same tier. I'm talking about, I think they're both inside my top 14. But I'm taking CeeDee Lamb here. Like, it's not just because I'm biased, not just because I'm a Cowboys fan. It's because we saw him do it last year already. And there's nothing happening this offseason or happening from the player himself that makes me think that he's not going to be anything that I initially thought he would be. And when I did my analysis of him, would be a 1,200, 1,300 yard, 10 plus touchdown type of potential. I do still see that type of talent with CeeDee Lamb. And I believe they're only a year apart in terms of age. So like, it's not even you're getting a big age discrepancy here. It's not like we're comparing like Terry McLaurin versus Jamar Chase, because Terry McLaurin's older than people actually think he is. But I know I went on a little tangent here, but it's CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, this is really close for me. I think I would take CeeDee Lamb as well, but it's only just out of the sheer fact that I've seen him do it in the NFL already. Like, they're both so close in my rankings. I think I have them back to back. Jamar Chase to me has a higher ceiling just because he can be the true alpha number 1 in his offense. Whereas I'm sure CeeDee Lamb could be the alpha number 1 in terms of targets, maybe in terms of touchdowns, but I think Amari Cooper is going to be around for a couple years still. I don't think he's going anywhere. And I think Amari Cooper, from a production standpoint, is going to eat into Lamb more than Higgins will eat into Chase. And on the point that you talked about with the passing offense too, like I trust Dak Prescott more than I trust Joe Burrow, but I think Joe Burrow is still going to be a great quarterback. And I still think they're going to throw the ball quite a bit in Cincinnati as well. And I trust the running game to be a little bit more ineffective in Cincinnati than I do in Dallas. So, I mean, again, it's very close. It all comes down to, like, I've just seen Lamb do it already in the NFL. So I'll just take him because he's a bit safer from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you have either of these guys on your team, or I want to say appreciating asset all the time, these are two of the best appreciating assets to the wide receiver position. So anyways, get into the next team, and that's going to be BCapp 27. So you can take it away with this one.
Yeah, and this actually came from a YouTube comment on last week's Dynasty decision. Yeah, like right before we started recording, he commented this, and I was like, hey, do you want us to answer this on this week's? And he's like, sure, my draft's June 15th, so make sure it's out before then. But either way, his team's on the screen right now. You can see it's actually pretty similar to the other team that we went over, but Cousins, Tua, Jimmy G. Dalton, not the greatest quarterback situation. He's got Mixon, Demon, Uncle Lenny, and some other backups that are pretty decent backups. He's got Justin Jefferson, Calvin Ridley, 2 great options there, and then some young guys. Dallas Goedert's his main tight end. Then he's got some young guys as well there too. His big decision that he's looking for is it's a 10-team Superflex, half PPR tight end premium, and it's a full PPR obviously for tight end, so 2x tight end premium. He has the 103 and the 104 and the 108 as his main picks, and then he also has the 207 and the 307. He knows for a fact that Trevor Lawrence and Trey Lance will be gone 101, 102. So what he's looking for at 103, 104 is, should he go with a running back like Najee Harris, ETN, Javonte Williams? Should he go with a quarterback like Justin Fields or something like that? Or should he go with Kyle Pitts with some of those picks? So to me, when you look at his roster, the 2 biggest holes on his roster are quarterback 1, 2, or 3, whatever way you want to order the quarterbacks, and running back 3 behind David Montgomery and Joe Mixon.
Easily, yeah.
So while Kyle Pitts is a great player and it is a 2x tight end premium, it'd be hard for me to pick him ahead of a superstar quarterback like Justin Fields or Zach Wilson, whoever you view as the 3rd best quarterback in this class, and Najee Harris. To me, Najee Harris is a lock. You pick Najee Harris because he's, in both of our opinions, the best player on the board. He's both of our 102s, 103s in terms of a superflex draft. So I would go with Najee Harris as one of your picks. And then to me, after that, it comes down to, do you want to go with Justin Fields or do you want to go with Kyle Pitts? Because it's a tight end premium, I understand why you would go with Kyle Pitts, but you already have Dallas Goedert, who's going to be good in that format anyway. He's going to get a lot of targets. He's going to get a lot of receptions as really the only established weapon in that offense outside of, we presume, Devontae Smith, maybe not even him. So if you're tempted by the tight end premium, you could always take Kyle Pitts, trade Dallas Goedert. That's something that we preach doing. Take the best player available. And in a tight end premium, I don't blame you for taking Kyle Pitts over a quarterback. I personally would take Justin Fields.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Harris locked and loaded. Take him at 103. He's your third back easily, like not even a question mark. And given your situation, I would take Justin Fields at that 104. And you mentioned you also have that 108. And it's interesting because you get Harris and Fields at the 103, 104. The 108, you could, if Wilson's there, I'm just going to take him. Like, I'm not worried about quote unquote overstacking at one position, because quarterback is the one position in a super flex that you can never have too many of, in my opinion. Quarterbacks and running backs. And in general, if you added Wilson and Fields to this lineup, I mean, you got the young guys with Tua, Wilson, and Fields, and then you still have trade bait where if you want to move Cousins and Cousins and Juju and upgrade your wide receiver 3, or if you want to move Cousins and Goddard and maybe upgrade your tight end, you have so much more roster flexibility if you're able to do that. And again, if Wilson's gone at the 108, you still got guys like Travis Etienne, Jamar Chase, Javonte Williams, Devonta Smith. You have options there, but overall, like, again, you have so much flexibility you can do. You talk about the 207 and the 307. 207 might sound interesting, but like if Pat Fryermuth's there at the 207, I would be tempted by that. I think that's a decent value. Hunter Long maybe at the 307 if he's there. Overall, you got so much flexibility to be able to work with here, in my opinion.
Yeah, the one thing that I would say you should consider is, do you want to be risky? Because in a great scenario, the best case scenario for you, if you wanted to do this and you wanted to try and see if this would work, gauge where your league mates are at on Zach Wilson. Because to me, Zach Wilson is the better fantasy prospect than Justin Fields. I'm alone in that camp. You don't believe that, and not a lot of people believe that. But if you believe in Zach Wilson, what you could do is go Najee Harris at 103, Kyle Pitts at 104, and pray to God that Zach Wilson makes it to 108. Because then if you could come away with those 3 players, then your team is better than the situation that I talked about with Fields, and then hoping that, you know, you get a Javonte Williams or a Travis Etienne at 108. So if you're feeling lucky, if you're feeling risky, you could do that. And honestly, even worst case scenario, if you wanted to take Mac Jones at 108, you could always trade down too.
Yeah,
if
that's what I mean.
Come up for Jamar Chase or Travis Etienne or someone on the board, and then move down with them and take Mac Jones. We probably didn't answer your question because we just think you have a lot of flexibility. So I would go around, kind of see where your league mates are at, potentially look to make some moves as well, because you could go in 2 directions. You could either take the QB at 4, take Najee Harris at 3, and then, you know, take best player available at 108, whether it's a running back, another quarterback, or maybe somehow Pitts slips there. He's probably not going to, but
imagine. I got him at 109 in our league.
Yeah, but that was in a tight end premium, so it's probably not going to happen. But yeah, you got a lot of options. We'll move on to the next team. So
the one thing I'll say quickly, if you want live feed on this and you're in your draft and you're confused on the clock, we have a bunch of dedicated football fans in that Discord. You're in that live draft. Guess what? You send a couple pictures in. I'm sure you'll have like 15 degenerates just helping you out right on the bat. So make sure
you guys can always DM us personally too.
Again,
if you want some questions. I know a lot of people, when they're in their draft specifically, have asked us questions like that. Like, hey, I'm on the clock. 106 is this. You know, I'm at the 107. This is my team. We can always give you that kind of feedback in live action too. You don't have to like pay for that or anything. So MP 60 and a bunch of letters. His team is up next. He's coming from Germany. He's watching from Germany. He said he's new to Dynasty, so quick shout out there. Full PPR, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 3 flex. So it's a pretty deep league, but only a 1 quarterback league. He also says he gets yardage from return men, and I didn't get if he gets the same yardage on like a rushing yard. Like, is it 0.1 yards for return yards? I'd imagine it's less. You get some points for return yards, but it's not like the same as if they're on offense. So just keep that in mind with some of these guys, because some of them do have return appeal. Like, as you can see on the screen, his team, he has Jalen Waddle, Rondell Moore, Tony Pollard. He's got Andre Roberts. Like, those guys might have some return appeal that might increase their value in that kind of scoring format. So what he really wants to know, though, is that he says he got great value in his startup regarding his running backs and tight ends. And I would agree with him. He's got Saquon Barkley and Cam Akers on the same team. Also has Darren Waller. Yeah, and he has... it's only a single quarterback. So but yeah, so what he's worried about is the fact that his receiving core is weak. And I agree with it. Like, it is weak, especially when you look at his scoring format, because it is a full PPR. It is a 3 wide receiver start and it's a 3 flex. So I would say receivers in your scoring format would have more value than they normally would because it's a full PPR, because you got to start 3 of them. He's asking, how can he improve his receiving core? My first thought is using one of your quarterbacks, because I know it's a 1 quarterback league and they're going to have less value, but Deshaun Watson and Ryan Tannehill are still great options. And you said you're from Germany. I'd imagine you're playing with other people from Germany, and maybe they don't subscribe to the late round quarterback theory as much. Maybe I could be wrong on that, but you might be able to move those guys for more than you think. If you go to a contending team who doesn't have a great quarterback, maybe their QB is like Kirk Cousins or something like that, and you float Deshaun Watson or Ryan Tannehill in front of them and be like, hey, I want, I'm trying to think of what tier of receiver you could get, but you could probably get a decent receiver for Ryan Tannehill.
Devonta Smith?
Yeah, maybe you could get a Devontae Smith for Ryan Tannehill. Maybe you could get a Jerry Jeudy for Ryan Tannehill. Maybe you could get someone like that, and maybe you could even package Tannehill and Jalen Waddle or Tannehill and Adam Thielen and try and get an even better option. Try and go from Tannehill and Adam Thielen to Mike Evans or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. You got a ton of options here, and in general, I think you got a really good team. So yeah, aside from that wide receivers, I mean, your RBs and your tight ends are ridiculous. Your quarterbacks are ridiculous. It's just having those steady, set and forget it type of receivers, in my opinion. So anything else you want to add, or can we move on here?
No, you got, I mean, like you said, you got a lot of flexibility. The only problem is that you don't, in a PPR league, you don't have a lot of PPR guys. So if you could go out and acquire some PPR guys like Jarvis Landry, for example, if you could throw a 3rd round pick at the owner and see if you can get a guy like that, I think that would make your receiving core a little bit more formidable, because it's not going to be the unit of your team that carries your team, right? Prescott, Barkley, Akers, Waller, these guys are going to carry your team. If you can just get some complimentary guys, some boomer bust guys to mix in there in those flex spots, then you could probably win with this team.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll go on quickly to a trade and then the next team. But AJDM wanted to get our thoughts on the deal he made. So he ended up acquiring Robert Woods and Adam Thielen in exchange for T. Higgins and Michael Carter. And to me, this is a very fair deal, both sides. The way I look at this, the classic contender versus rebuilder. If you are a contender, I love the Woods and Thielen side. If you are a rebuilder, getting Higgins and the potential Carter for 2 older depreciating assets is fair. So overall, I'm assuming you're making this deal as a contender, and thus you're getting 2 locked and loaded top 24 at minimum wide receivers for the 2021 season. I really like this move for you.
Right. And Carter's a guy that when we talk about boomer bust guys, we're probably going to talk about Michael Carter, because his range of outcomes is very high, especially from a dynasty perspective. We could be looking at a guy that steps right in and can not be the next Austin Eckler, but he could be a guy like that for the Jets. And he'll return huge value if he hits that kind of ceiling, but he could also be a guy that is replaced immediately next year when the Jets draft a running back in the 1st round. Like, his range of outcomes is that big, in my opinion. It all comes down to his ability and his fit in the offense, which I think are both pluses for him, but it is still a question mark. So moving Carter's a guy that is by far the most question marks of anybody in that deal, but he also has a high ceiling too. Like Danny said, I like it for both sides, assuming one's a rebuilder and one's a contender.
Yep, for sure. So we can get on to these last 2 teams and questions, and we'll try to keep these a little more swift and moving, because we're currently going on about 43 minutes in this video. But Branmichael says, what can I do to make this a top contender? You guys can see it on the screen. But quarterbacks, Allen, Cousins, Taylor. Running backs, Zeke, Swift, Mike Davis, Booker, Pollard, Latavius. Wide receivers, Tyreek, Juju, A-Rob, Cooks, Reynolds, Sanders, and some fodder. And then at tight end, you got Logan Thomas, Jack Doyle, Jared Cook, and Will Disley. So in this super flex format. So overall, what are your initial thoughts on the team, and what are your main areas to improve and answer this question to make it a top contender?
Yeah, I mean, like Tyrod Taylor as your 3rd quarterback when Kirk Cousins as your 2nd quarterback, who's already kind of a little bit concerning for me. I think you need a better 3rd quarterback. I'm not sure if you've had your rookie draft or not. He didn't actually say that. Actually, I guess he has, because I could see Tutu Atwell's on his team. So I mean, you're kind of in a tough situation, I would say, from a quarterback perspective. But for this year, you should be able to contend with this team, given the fact that Allen and Cousins should both be solid quarterback options. Your running backs are pretty solid. Your wide receivers are pretty solid. Tight end wise, I mean, you could get better there as well. But I don't think you can really do much outside of, trading away one strength to improve your tight end spot. So overall, I would say your team is pretty solid. But to be a top contender, you might be a little bit in
work,
You need some work. You're in a little bit of no man's land from that perspective.
Yeah, I agree. In my opinion, what I would do, this cut it dry. I would try to see what I can get for Allen. Cut it dry. Like if you can get two, like a Tannehill and I don't know, what's a second tier quarterback? Like a Tannehill, a Zach Wilson, and a pick for Josh Allen. I would do that type of deal. This to me looks like a 2023. You want to retool this team. You want to make sure it's a top contender going into 2023. That's the way I look at it, or 2022. That's the way I look at it. I don't think you can win this year. I know.
I think you could win this year. I think with Allen Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Zeke Elliott, DeAndre Swift, Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, Logan Thomas, like that's your starting lineup. And then you got guys that you can flex like Mike Davis and Juju and stuff. I think you could potentially win this year. It would probably be an uphill battle. You probably have a playoff team, but not a contending team. But if you have a playoff team, like injuries happen to other teams, you never know. So I wouldn't tear it down this year unless you get some extreme value for Josh Allen. But this time next year, if you came in 7th or something like that, then I would tear it down.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more like I want to be a top 3 team, or I just want to kind of retool for the next year. That's the way I kind of look at it. Like if I'm just sneaking into the playoffs, I don't.
I'm more really of a if I'm a top 5 team, I'll try and contend because anything can happen. Once you get in the playoffs, Duke never wins March Madness. If you're a top 5 team, you can win.
Yeah, maybe so. Overall, it depends on your philosophy. It depends if you're aiming to go into it like almost certain you can be that top team versus if you want to give yourself a chance. Me personally, again, I would kind of just strip it, rebuild for 2022, and kind of see where I can go from there. So overall, we can get into the final team, and that's going to be Tomagotchi's team. So he's currently trying to trade for another running back. Who do you think he should move? He has all of his future picks, so you guys can see on the screen. But Josh Allen, Jameis Winston, Joe Burrow in a 1-quarterback league. CEH, Gibson, Latavius, McFarland, and a bunch of fodder on his bench, a bunch of rookie backs. Wide receiver, you got Godwin, Thielen, Higgins, Kupp, Tony, Antonio Brown, Crowder, Scotty Miller, and Tim Patrick. And then at tight end, you got George Kittle, Robert Tonyan, and Blake Jarwin. So what are your initial thoughts when seeing the team and seeing what he can kind of do to scoop up that RB value?
Right, yeah, like he's got a contending team for sure. He's got like one of the best QBs in the league. He's got he's got 2 great young running backs, got a lot of good receivers, and one of the best tight ends in fantasy. So I would say you can contend with this team. I'm not even sure I would necessarily force a move to go out and grab another running back, but at the same time, if anything happened to CEH or Gibson, you'd be in pretty big trouble from who you're starting as your RB2 then, because you got to start Latavius Murray most likely as your RB2, and then that's not really the most ideal situation to be in. If you could move would you trade a 1st-round pick for Chris Carson or someone of that tier, maybe a little bit better than Chris? Like if you could get David Montgomery for a 1st-round pick.
Yeah, I'd probably do that as a contender. I was also thinking, like, what about like Thielen and Tonyan for something?
I don't think you're going to get that good of a running back for Thielen and Tonyan. Like you might get like a Ronald Jones or a Damian Harris for that.
Or what about a wide receiver upgrade, and then you could again make that move for a David Montgomery type. Like if you can go Thielen and Tonyan for a more appreciating type of asset or wide receiver, maybe just outside like the Jerry Jeudy type area, the right after that type of area is probably what I would look at. And again, you mentioned if you can get a 1st-round pick and move that for David Montgomery, that would make this team a very viable contender, in my opinion, getting that locked and loaded 3. So I do agree. Any closing thoughts on the team?
No, the one thing I would suggest too is that if you wanted to make your running backs a bigger strength, you could also try and move CEH plus your 1st and try and get a tier 1 running back. Like see if you could go CEH in a 1st for Dalvin Cook or something, because you're trying to compete. If you wanted to, really commit to that competing window, you could do something like that. But then again, like you're giving up a lot of age in that kind of deal.
I would need probably like a Saquon or JT to do that.
Yeah, you could. I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to get JT for it, but you might be able to get Saquon for that, or you might be able to get McCaffrey if you went CEH a 1st and like another piece on top of it.
Yeah, for sure. So overall, you got flexibility. I do think you're in a great spot. Maybe a couple moves, maybe moving those future picks can help you get that set it and forget it RB3 type.
Even if you went and just moved Adam Thielen for Damian Harris or something like that gives your RB3 slot is the only thing that really concerns me, right? Because if anything happened to either of those guys, then you're in trouble. But if you could move Adam Thielen for Damian Harris, then you're in a position where Damian Harris can start for you if either of those guys miss games or on bye week or whatever the case is.
Yeah, for sure. So with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. And if you've made it this far, comment down below Dynasty decisions forever. But anyways, we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, y'all.